Hi, dog mums and dads. We're back for another episode of The Natural Dog Mum. And today we're chatting with Cal. He is the founder of a new up and coming natural supplement brand called Bark Botanica. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Anytime. Excited to hear more about the products and what you're doing. I'd love to hear a little more about how you got started. You've got quite the interesting story from investment banking to dog training now to supplements. So walk us through that.
Sure. Roll the tapes back. Summer of 2017 is when our lives changed. As I think most of us from the dog industry, it starts with a dog that you have issues with. And we got Elsa in December of 2017. And straight off the bat, we knew that something was not quite right, despite, our research, looking at the right breeders and, all the genetics and all of that. She came about to have some really severe allergies, skin and coat issues. And I think that's what then eventually we found out that might have been triggered to her, massive reactivity towards everything. So that's where it all started from. Both me and my wife were doing corporate jobs, and I've been in investment banking for much longer than I've been a dog trainer for. I was doing a corporate job at that time and started going down the deep dark rabbit hole of behavior and dog health, and one thing led to another. And then we started, training dogs that was first. So Ibex Canine came about in October 2019. And then very subsequently, Bark Botanica came about after a few years. So that's how we are where we are right now.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about Elsa and the problems she was having? You mentioned skin and allergies. How did that present itself in her case?
Yeah, so right when she was a puppy, she was extremely itchy, extremely irritable. She was obviously on commercial diets at that time. Her breeder had mentioned that this is what she's been reared on, and her litter has been weaned onto, and that's we continued doing that. But very quickly we found out that there's something which not quite right. Like you can. Now, if you think back, you can almost put a finger on it. Like once we changed diets, it started getting a little bit better and better. But we didn't really have, a very good insight on what we should exactly do, just given the knowledge that we had at that point in time. So we started looking for vets who were more holistic in their approach and started taking their guidance and understanding a bit more about how all the how these allergies present themselves as problems of the gut. But essentially it was very severe allergies to a lot of the things actually. So some proteins, some environmental things. She also didn't really have a very good so she couldn't keep down a lot of things at that point in time as well. So we knew something's wrong, but we just didn't know where to start off from. So that's where we started, looking at professionals which were more holistic in nature, in their approaches, and reached out to them. And we've been very lucky in terms of the amount of time that people have given us over the years. Yeah, so she still has a lot of health issues at the moment, but it's all management. She's almost 7 now, so we've been able to manage those really well.
So what sort of changes, when you're talking about diet, did you make? Did you transition to raw or to lightly cooked? Walk me through the process.
Yeah, so it was 7 years back. So there was not a lot of information on what should you do. So there's a bit of experimentation on what sits well with her. We started off on a full raw diet and quickly found out that that was probably not the right approach for her. But we found that out after a year or two, where she was just not putting on weight. Like she was really, really skinny, no matter how much she sort of, ate. So we were like, okay, what can we change, right? So then came in hybrid approaches where we started moving it to slightly more cooked and added a bit more carbs into the diet and added a bit more, it was a mishmash of everything really. And that brings me to my point where over the years, we've learned that there's no one approach that fits all. Like you really have to have a look at the dog in front of you and make sure that you're sort of tuning your approach to what that dog has gaps in, I think, or is struggling with. So at the moment, she's mostly on cooked meals. So we cook her meals ourselves. She has a bit of kibble here and there, and a bit of raw here and there, like chicken frames and things like that. So she's allergic to chicken, and she loves chicken. So we like to moderate it. Otherwise, she just bursts out in allergies. So we like to keep it at low. But she has a bit of everything at the moment now.
So, what sort of supplementation were you giving her? Was there anything in particular that you found that helped her, whether it was with the gut or generally?
Yeah, so when we started looking at where we should start off on, we quickly realized that the gut is probably where we should start off from. At that time, we started some probiotics and just off the shelf stuff. Really, very quickly we reached out to a naturopath, a Chinese herbal doctor, and a couple of other people who guided us along the way in terms of having her started off on some herbs. That's where essentially the base formula of our gut health comes from. That's where we started moving towards, herbs that are naturally soothing for the dogs. So things like chamomile, things like dandelion, things like ginger. That's where we started adding these individual sort of herbs to soothe her stomach. And that's where we really saw a massive difference come up in her health. She started putting on weight. She started her coat improved, her overall energy levels improved, that's where we thought, why not make something or formulate something which we can eventually share with people. And I think that's been a common underlying story for our brand, really. Jasper's story is the same. So Jasper's my lab, who's almost 4 years old now, and he's started developing some liver issues, and we're sort of formulating a liver support supplement now in the works. That's, I think, fortunately and unfortunately, it's been our underlying story and driver to all of what we're doing.
It's a very common founder story for a lot of brands, isn't it? It usually starts with a problem with one of your own animals that you're looking for answers for.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I mean, if we're of the belief that if something works for us, like, we should definitely share it with the world. So yeah, that's where it all started from, and not just from Bark Botanica. It really was the origins of Ibex Canine, my dog training business as well, where Elsa started having some behavior issues right off the bat. I think very highly suspicious of her ill health, and that's how my dog training journey started off from as well. Like, there's a very deep connection between diet and the comfort that it provides and the overall behavior of how that the dogs present.
Absolutely. So, can you give us some examples of some of the behaviours that created that link in your mind and led you to start training?
Yeah, so if I think I have a better structure now, having spent a few years in the industry. We as dog trainers are lucky in the fact that we get called out most often as the first industry professionals when things go wrong, or, well, for lack of a better term. Uh, and if I sort of have three buckets where we get called out, it's one bucket's obviously puppies, where people get a new puppy or a new dog at home. The other one, young dogs doing things that they shouldn't be, and starting to display some behaviors that they shouldn't be. And then obviously senior dogs, and people usually say, oh, he's never done that before, right? And we should probably call out a dog trainer. So each of those individual buckets, diet or the underlying health, can present itself in different ways. So with puppies, it's more that we should take the opportunity to develop that puppy into a dog that is so robust and has a lot of these immune systems, firing the way they should. It's really one chance to make sure that that gut is really well developed, I guess. But it's also, a very fine balance around not overloading people with things, right? So that's where we start talking about, the quality of food, that you feed the puppy, and it's got a massive link to simple things like energy levels, and people don't think about that, right? So what fuels the body fuels the brain, really, right? So when people come to us saying, oh, my 10-12-week-old puppy doesn't really switch off, my first question would be, what are you feeding them, right? And how much are you feeding them? The quantity of food as well is, nobody really measures it anymore. You just sort of, it's all eyeballing stuff, right? So that's where not just the diet, but the quantity of food also makes a massive difference, right? Coming on to the adolescence, like it's a slightly different issue there, where you've had the dog settled in, but then your activity levels have changed. The dog's done with its growth, but then it's either still on puppy food, which is giving in such a calorie dense food to the dog, and that presents itself in a very different way. And then with senior dogs, it's more the health layer that we need to check and talk about. Where is there any pain involved? Is there underlying issues involved? Have you changed diets? And that's why the dog's presenting in a certain way and doing things that it probably never used to do. Is it uncomfortable because you've changed what you feed the dog? Have you fed the dog table scraps and things that it has never had before? That's a conversation that we typically have with senior owners of senior dogs. But I guess at the end, diet might not be the be all end all of behavior. Obviously, there's a lot more variables involved in addressing a behavior that is presented. But what we try and do, or at least I try and do, is seed that thought into people's brains. Diet might be one of the things that you should consider, and really how clean that fuel is a lot more important in the long run to the overall health of the dog. That the behaviors that present itself might have an underlying link to what you're fueling and how much you're fueling.
Absolutely. In my case, years and years ago, when I first was transitioning my dogs to a raw diet, they do get lightly cooked occasionally, but mainly raw. Even very subtle changes in their behaviour that I didn't expect to see at the time, with the knowledge that I had at the time. Things like their selective hearing improved. They paid attention and concentrated just a little bit better. They weren't so scatterbrained and all over the place. They were actually less excitable. They were actually just a little bit calmer, which made it easier to communicate with them, which for anyone who has retrievers, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that. I mean, I was expecting the physical changes, no more gas, and, their poos were looking much healthier, all the state of their coat, all of those sorts of things I expected. But I was really pleasantly surprised with the changes. And this is relatively normal dogs with no specific behavioural issues. But over the course of sort of a couple of months, that became really clear. And I think that's something that a lot of pet owners aren't very aware of at this stage. Just how
Yeah.
much what you feed them affects every aspect of their life and their health, not just their physical health.
Yeah. I remember a case distinctly about a few years back now. This was early 2020s, I guess, 2020. There was a staffy that I was training, and for some reason he just couldn't cope with what we're asking him to do. And it was not a lot, right? It was just some basic obedience, really basic stuff, but his brain was just all over the place. So very quickly, we sort of realized that the food part, the meals itself were okay. It was not terrible quality food that he was on, but there were 3 kids in the house, and the kids were just giving dog schmackos upon schmackos and treats upon treats. And the dog was just fueling up and was having these massive, sugar spikes and crashes. The dog was just frankly very, struggling to focus on anything. So oftentimes, people will say, "Oh, he's on the best of food, or he's on the best of kibble, or he's on the best of cook. I cook for him, or whatever that might be." But oftentimes forget, the quality of in betweens, as I call it, or the snacks or treats. Matters
Yeah.
sometimes more than anything else. The diet, I try and make sure that people understand the diet's the overall bit, not just the 2 or 3 meals or one meal that the dog has. We got to look at it holistically, and how do we make sure that the dog has access to better snacks, or better what constitutes a better midday snack. So it's a bit about that too. We also talk about free feeding a lot. Like, why is it a bad idea to free feed and let just dogs come and go as they please, right? So one of those things is not just what you feed them, it's how you feed them, at what times you feed them as well, right? So it's all linked really, really well into what the dog's doing at what time of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And intermittent fasting, which everyone is talking about for their own health for different reasons, it actually can have some positive benefits for the dogs as well. I mean, unless you've got an older dog, or unless you've got a puppy or a dog that has digestive issues, they really only need to be fed once a day. Sometimes I'll give bones a few times in between, but at least once, twice a week, they will just have their evening meal, but nothing else in between. So it actually gives their gut a chance to rest and recover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I try and tell people that at least if you're not wanting to move to a cleaner diet for whatever reasons that might be, and there might be a number of reasons like time constraints, whatever they might be, I try and tell people at least try and feed them within an 8-hour window, like both their meals in an 8 or 9 hour window, and that should have at least some positive impact on how their body processes it.
Absolutely. So tell us some more about the range. At the moment, you've got 2 products available, yes?
Yeah, so we have 3 products now. We have a joint
Great.
support. We have a bone broth concentrate, and that's just pure beef bone broth with very limited ingredients. It's just beef bones and water. And then we have a gut health supplement. That's really our flagship product. Obviously, we have some others in the lineup, but as I said, I mean, essentially all of those supplements were designed for our dogs. Elsa has joint issues. She's had multiple joint issues over the years, and we wanted something which is gentle on the stomach, and we wanted something which we can use long term, and we didn't want something that would just sort of look at one thing and let's say just anti-inflammatory for that reason, and then we have to add a ton of other things on top of it just to make sure that she gets everything. So that's how we came up with the joint supplement, which has rosehip in it, which has green lip mussel, which has ginger for anti-inflammatory, and then we have broccoli in there for the sulfur content. So that was sort of the birth of our joint supplement. And then we have bone broth, which is just pure, bone broth, freeze-dried bone broth concentrate powder. It's one of the few ones which actually really dissolve in water. Some of the others have bone meal in it. And I'm like, well, that's not bone broth. It's just bone meal. It's bone. It's powdered bone. So that's really convenient, shelf-stable, and easy to sort of, make a cup of it before meal times. And then there's the gut health, which has got really good feedback from all our customers, and that's got some really good, herbs, which are gut soothing, gut protecting, things like ginger, licorice, chamomile, dandelion. We have a multi-strain probiotic in there. We have 5 different strains of bacteria in, all which are microencapsulated, which means they actually go where they're supposed to go in the gut and then work, rather than just dying off in high pH environments. And so that's one of the things that we are very careful in sourcing our probiotic blend. It has to be efficient. It has to have efficacy. And then we have a little bit of kangaroo meal in there just for palatability purposes.
I love that.
Sorry, what was that?
They would love that.
Yeah, just to make sure that the dogs indeed, have it. Otherwise, there's no point of having a supplement which dogs refuse to have.
Yeah.
So that's really giving people good results. We've seen feedback coming in where people have said, oh, this is a gut supplement, I know, but it's cleared up your tear stains on my dogs, right? It cleared up gunky ears, and it's all very reassuring, because those are the exact things that had helped Elsa a lot, when we were
And it all goes back to the gut anyway. All of those problems that you mentioned, 9 times out of 10 are gut related. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you could basically bundle at this point in time if you're buying from our website, shameless plug here, but you could bundle the bone broth and the joint because that sort of goes in well with each other as well because bone broth is the collagen and everything else in there. And then same thing works with the gut and bone broth bundle as well, right? So and I usually tell people, give the bone broth as a soup maybe 30 minutes before your meals, and then add the gut health to the meals, and that should be good enough.
And it's easy too because they love the smell, they love the taste. The other thing that I do in the hot weather as well is I've got lots of little ice cube trays, and I will make up the bone broth, and I'll make little frozen treats for them to cool them down on a hot day, but they're getting those extra nutrients as well, and they just think it's Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Just a big popsicle, during those hot is fantastic. And you could add little veggies in it and, minced, blended veggies in it and things like that, make it nicer. But yeah, that's all up there now. Obviously we have other things lined up, liver support is one of the things that we have lined up as well.
It's very important.
Yeah, a couple of ones. Yeah. Again, it's been born out of Jasper's health and his health requirements and where he's struggling with his health on. And again, we're just testing a few things out, and that's the bit that takes the longest.
Yeah.
So even though we conceived the idea of having this all natural, all really clean herbal supplement plan probably a couple of years back to get our ducks lined up, and make sure that we've done enough user testing. It takes time.
Absolutely. So if people are wanting to find out more information about Bark Botanica, or they're looking for some supplements, where is the best place to connect with you?
Best place is the website, barkbotanica.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places. Just our brand name, barkbotanica.com. Yeah, and keep an eye out on the website. We have other products lined up as well over the next few months.
Sounds great. Now, I think we need to get you back for some more chats down the track as well. There's so much ground that we could cover. And as you know, I've got a background in canine herbalism, so anything herb related is automatically for me definitely in my wheelhouse. And I'm currently doing my second certification in nutrition as well. So very, very interesting stuff, and so many different areas we could do deep dives. So would love to get you back to chat some more down the track.
Would love to. Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds terrific. Well, thank you so much again, and we look forward to catching up with you again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.